Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Critters, where we live stream every Sunday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, unless otherwise noted. If you're new, my name is Lara Joseph, owner of the Animal Behavior Center. We're an international educational center where we teach people all over the world how to empower animals and the people that care for them. We do that through our live streaming services, which you can find on our website at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Good morning, Susie. Good morning, everybody. So what we do is we work with the science of behavior called applied behavior analysis, and we implement it with the animals under our care. I work with numerous different species of animals, from different species of birds, alligators, wolves, giraffes. I'll work with anything. I also have at home with me a deaf dog and a deaf and blind dog that were both born that way. But I prefer to focus my services and my training on working with exotics, because there's so many people that work with domestic animals that do fabulous work. So I try to back up their work of using the science of behavior with exotics, because exotics tend to be less resilient. You can get yourself in a lot of danger and get harmed if you're using force or aversives to control exotics. I'm not going to get in a gator pen and force a gator to do anything. I'm going to train it to do what I need it to do for its well-being, its health, and for education. I work with a lot of educational animals. Good morning, everybody. So it's been a while since I've live streamed at the Animal Behavior Center. Okay, my camera has gone off, so I'm going to tell it, follow me again. But you're going to start seeing a lot of me working back here at the center. So after this, I just don't work live stream here at the center a lot, because in the other room we have numerous different species of birds and they're very loud. So today I'm live streaming from the enrichment room, where currently in here all we have are a pair of black-cast hornbills. So the topic of today's episode is working with a fearful animal. So if you don't work with birds, keep watching, because I keep turning my camera off because I work so much with my hands. I talk so much with my hands. I tried to pick some fearful animals, so I chose to do this live stream today with Fred and Wilma, the black-cast hornbills that you will see right there. And we're currently live streaming our work with fearful wolves in our level 2 membership. You can find out more about what we do, like I said, on the website, our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Tune in every Sunday morning, because this is where we live stream. A couple of different things and if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at Lara, L-A-R-A, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com, and I answer your questions, listen to what you have to say, and I am very passionate about the work that I do. I will not force an animal to do anything. If I have to use force, it's because the alternative of not using it at that particular time is worse than the consequences of not using it. For example, having to capture something because it got into another enclosure, an animal's gonna get hurt, a human's gonna get hurt. If I see a situation like that, I will use force, because the alternative of not using it at that moment is worse, but then it's note to self, this needs training. So if you're not on our email newsletter list, you may want to join, and you can join right here on our Facebook page. If you're attending this, you probably got our email last night, and you noticed that we have 2 upcoming workshops that we announced. We have our advanced training, zoo training workshop coming up, and we also have our parrot enrichment workshop coming up. So let's go ahead and get started with working with fearful animals. If you don't work with birds, watch what I do anyways, because you'll see some of the things I watch out for when I'm working with a fearful animal. I do not want an animal to be fearful of me, because I'm the one that usually has to get the animal prepared for a veterinary exam, whatever. So this is Fred and Wilma, the black cats hornbills, who are residing here temporarily for training, a male and female. And we've come a long way with these two. So when we first got these two, we couldn't even enter the same room that they were in without them flying into the sides of their cage. So what we did, and you'll see, before I start working with an animal, there's several things I do. I set the environment up for success so I can get the behavior that I need for the future well-being of that animal. I don't want animals under my care being extremely fearful of me every time I walk in the room. It's not good for their mental and physical health, and it's probably not good for their medical health either. So before I start working with them, I observe. So when we first got these two, we did put them in this enclosure, and then we wrapped sheets around the back quarter of the enclosure to give them a place to hide. And then what I started doing is every single time I walked in the room with them, I would pair myself with a positive reinforcer. So you need to figure out what those reinforcers are before you start working with them. They're not always food, but they can be. So with an animal that's fearful of me, a lot of times you will see you can't use food because they're so fearful of you, they won't even eat while you're in the same room. So the first thing I did was identify reinforcers. So how I do that is I find out what they eat, what they need to eat, and hornbills. I've got Curiosity back here from Wilma. That's Wilma right there. She saw me pick up these containers, so the containers are a conditioned reinforcer. Me picking up the food, this food items is a conditioned reinforcer. So before I start working with a fearful animal, the first thing I do is observe. I sit back at a distance where I can see calm behavior, Obviously, this is how I turn on and on my camera that follows me. Sorry. So what I do is sit and watch how they act when they're calm. And a lot of animals that I start working with, I don't know anything about the animal, so I don't know anything about their behavior. I pay attention to the individual, and I watch what they look for when they're in more calm, relaxed, when I'm not around. And then I start identifying reinforcers, food reinforcers, if I can. And then what I find out over time is when you pair yourself with the positive food reinforcers, pretty soon the opportunity to be with you becomes a reinforcer, because I do not push them past their comfort level. And we're going to talk about how to identify what fear looks like. So I'll show you, and we just recorded a podcast yesterday that's uploaded to our memberships, hopefully today, called Behavior and Context. What I look for, what happens, what else is happening in the environment at the same time, so I can better identify what that vocalization means, what that darting of the eyes mean, lifting of the tail, feathers coming up somewhere. If I'm working with wolves, I'm watching their stance, how their tail is placed, what they're doing with the other wolves. So I've identified food reinforcers, and I've done this through just observing them, watching what I put in a food dish and what comes out. And sometimes I can't even be close enough to the animal to find out what they're eating. So I measure certain things when it goes in the food dish, and then when I can get close enough to the food dish, I see what has been eaten. Some of the animals I'll work with, I will put a camera on them so I can watch them, what they're doing when I'm not around. We have cameras this place is like Fort Knox. You can't even breathe in this center without a camera going off. And that's mostly because I'm just monitoring the animals while I'm not here. But I will use cameras, and you can see I've got a camera right here. And it's pointed down at the hornbills because I want to see what they're doing at night when I'm not around. Okay, so I've identified blueberries, and we've got soft-bill pellets here that we use as treats only, and I also have insects, and I have their AM feeds ready on the other side of that door. So let's go ahead and get them out. Because I want to show you the difference between the two. I've made a lot of progress with Wilma, and Fred. I have never touched Fred. I have cared for him for 3 years, and I've never touched him. We will get him out, weigh him, but before we get an animal out of an enclosure, before I get any animal out of an enclosure, I'm already training it. How am I going to get it back in? Getting it out is the easy part. How are you going to get it back in, especially if it's fearful, if you can't touch it? Fred, I can only be so close in front of him. So you'll see when I get, Fred is the one closest to the window. He's got the cask on the top of his horn, or on the top of his bill. So let me go ahead and get them out. You're gonna see some work in progress where I have trained them to come out and how I train them to get back in. And they don't even land on us to come in or go out. So this is pretty good for Fred being at the front of the enclosure. Be careful with the eye contact with him because it does make a difference with him. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see, so you can see Fred's more reluctant. And there we go. So when I first started working with Fred, he would go to the very back of the enclosure and wouldn't even come near the front. So, reinforced behavior you want to see maintain or increase. So Fred is staying over here, and I might have a little bit of situation trying to get the camera to, it's going to follow my face because I've got it set up to follow my face. And if I'm doing that, you might not see what Fred's doing in the background. So we've got perches hanging all over the ceiling to give height so when the volunteers come in, good. So right now, my focus is on getting Fred comfortable and moving around the environment. She's very fearful. I told you we've come a long way with Wilma. So this is a bonded pair, okay? And working with a bonded pair, if I have a relationship with one, which happens to be the one on my shoulder, I will use proximity to her as a way for me to be able to get close to the second one. And I'm using that now with Fred. I'm also showing him the food reinforcer before I give it to him. Now, I wish you could see the work I have done with them from the very beginning, which was 3 years ago. They've been with us for 3 years, but we've empowered the hell out of them in the past 3 years. So let's say my goal is I've got 2 perches over here. There's 1, there's 2, there we go. So if that's where I want them, I want to reinforce. So when I started working with him when he came out, I had to use a toss because I couldn't get close enough to him. So he is at this point, set the environment up for success. For what's the behavior you want to get. Make it very easy for the animal to do what you're asking so you can deliver a reinforcer. And I never ask a behavior if I don't have a reinforcer, right? Okay, so let's say I want to get Fred flying back and forth between these two perches. All right? When working with a fearful animal, especially birds, what you do not want to do, and what I do, is take complete control of the environment to empower the animal. What you do not want to do when you're working with a fearful animal is walk behind them. What I definitely don't want to do is I don't want numerous people in the environment where the bird has to look at somebody over here, somebody over there, or bird, any animal, okay? So I will control the environment and get all the people in one spot. So if I'm the bird and I'm looking at my trainer standing in front of me, I do not want people walking over here because the bird's got to look at both situations, and if it's not comfortable, I'm going to positively punish the very behavior I'm trying to train. What I do not want to do, like I said, is walk behind a fearful animal. So let's get Fred and Wilma flying to both these perches. Good. So my cue for her to fly over here was just walking up to it. So I noticed I've got my indoor shoes on. We wear different shoes outside. Fred pays attention to that because I've got like slip-on sandals with my socks, and Fred was like constantly watching where my feet were going. And a sign of fear for a hornbill, for a black casque hornbill, is an open beak. Good. That's where I want them. So I used Wilma being on that perch for him to fly to get closer to her because they're a bonded pair. She does that all the time. If he's not comfortable, she will take the food and feed him. That's fine. Use it. So he was getting ready to fly. So, say I want them both over here. Good. See, my camera's going to follow me, so you're not going to be able to see what Fred's doing behind me. So maybe it's my proximity to this perch that I want him to fly to. Let me get over here so you can see what he's doing. So I'm changing reinforcers. I'm moving to the blueberries to see if this is something of higher value at this particular time because I've been feeding the soft-billed pellets. So maybe I need to increase my distance from this perch to get him to fly to it. Scratching himself. He's contemplating. So when I see this, if he'll let me walk up, he's stretching. So let me go over and feed him one. And then I'll back up and deliver reinforcers at a higher rate to Wilma. And I'm tossing him to increase distance. Good. So if he's on the back perch, he'll get one once in a while. If he's in the front perch, he's going to get him at higher rates. That's where I want him. It's one of the 4 main factors of reinforcer effectiveness is these size. Make sure the size or the amount of the food reinforcer matches the behavior you want to get. If you're struggling with the behavior, offer the reinforcer in higher amounts for the more challenging behavior. To get contingency. Okay, now say I want to walk back to the camera. If I walk straight to the camera right now, he may fly away. Switching reinforcer to blueberries, and I'm going to shape the behavior of me getting to the camera. So he's a little nervous, so I'm going to back up. And I noticed the fear because his head perked up and he turned his head to me sideways. So if I want to get to the camera, this is what I'm going to do. And he flew away. He flew back. So instead of walking right in front of him, I could see I've got some work to do. Contemplating. I haven't worked on crate training with them in a while. I don't know if I want to right now because I can't even get them to stay on that perch. So, let's work on this. Let's work on me getting in between those 2 perches when they're on separate perches, okay? They're a bonded pair. They find comfort in being together. Now they're apart. So I've moved on to mealworms. So when I'm working with a bonded pair and I'm working with a fearful animal in that bonded pair, what I don't want to do is walk in between them unless I start shaping that. So I'm going to work on walking in between them, but I'm delivering mealworms to see how high of a value it is. So how he just pecked at my hand to get the mealworm real quick, that's telling me that he's not necessarily comfortable, right? Is he not comfortable? So that means you're going to take the mealworm and you're going to go give it to him? Is that what that means? There he goes. Good. Now, I'm in a tricky situation because all of my reinforcers are right behind him. So when I'm working with him, I'm holding up the reinforcer so he can see it, and then I hand it to him. Standing in front of him and staring at him is an aversive, a positive punisher. And I have found that out due to accidentally doing it. But I make mistakes. I make mistakes when I train. Don't get frustrated if you make mistakes. Learn from them. So standing in front of him going, "Hey Fred, how you doing? You want one of these?" That is positively gonna positively punish his behavior of staying there. So when those mistakes happen, just note this is an aversive. Don't do it again. So her slipping off my shoulder. So hornbills don't have a lot of power in their feet. She's gonna go give it to him. I love that. I love that they're bonded. I love that there's so much communication here. What I was saying is hornbills don't have a lot of power in their feet, so her standing on my shoulder when I'm moving, you can feel behavior. She's slipping, so slipping means you're gonna lose your balance. That can be an aversive. Note, when you have a bird on your hand and you're not watching them and you're talking to the public and all of a sudden you feel their talons go or their feet clench, I will look at the bird to see what it's looking at so I can identify whatever is in the environment that is making this animal uncomfortable. So I got to get by them to get to different reinforcers. So be consistent. I will do repetition, 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 repetition. And each time I am delivering a reinforcer, I'm paying attention to what is the animal looking at. If the animal's looking down at my reinforcer that I'm getting ready to deliver, what I learned from that is he's not staring at me, nervous of me, wondering what I'm gonna do next. So fear is often lack of information. The animal does not understand, they do not have enough information. And I am here to give them that information through consistency that I am not gonna push you past your comfort level. If I do, it's a mistake, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. So he's looking at my eyes and I was looking at the food. And even though Wilma will take it from my hands, even though she'll take it from my hands, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to positively punish that behavior of him standing there. So it's 10 o'clock. I did want to do a lot more with them. I wanted to show you how I'm starting to crate train. Let me see where else there is. So people may say you have to have a lot of patience to do this. I am one of the most impatient people in the world. Okay, what I look for, my reinforcer is number one, the health of the animal. I want these animals to thrive. So what I'm looking for is small increments in behavior change with each training session. That is my reinforcer. So I am not a patient person. But here comes Wilma. But I want to tell you, you can also empower the animal and make them less fearful. I don't have anything. More thriving over their environment through, can I have my fingers back? Through enrichment, okay? And studies show that when you're using positive reinforcement training, it's the animal's preferred form of enrichment. That is what got me into training, because what entered me into this field was enriching animals to empower them, to help them thrive in their environment. So we do use training as a major form of enrichment here for each animal. We also use foraging toys. Right to the right of me is a huge pool full of boxes, balls, containers, crinkle paper, and in that we put their insects so they get on the ground and forage. And it took Fred a while I don't have any reinforcers in my hand, to come down off these perches we have hung on the ceiling, to come down here and here. Come here, let me give you something. To come down here and forage. because having an animal on the ground, they're more vulnerable. So I wanted to do a lot more with you guys today, but that half hour really flies. There's a lot of information I just gave you in this live stream. If you have a problem or you're battling or struggling with working with a fearful animal, contact me, Lara at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com, or you can also find us on our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. Pay attention to our 2 upcoming workshops, advanced animal training and our parrot enrichment. So thank you for attending this morning's episode of Coffee with Critters. I'll see you next Sunday at 9:30. Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed this.